This is Miriam Murcutt interviewing for the Maria Rogers Oral History Program in Boulder, Colorado. The date is Tuesday, January 28, 2014. Videographer for this interview is Liz McCutcheon. We're here with Bret Gibson, a resident of 4 Mile Canyon in West Boulder, to talk about his experiences in the devastating floods that affected Boulder, Colorado and its surrounding communities in mid-September 2013. Bret is the longtime owner of Boulder Mountain Lodge, which sits at the mouth of 4 Mile Canyon on the banks of 4 Mile Creek. For over 13 years, he has also been the volunteer fire chief of the 4 Mile Canyon Volunteer Fire Department. So welcome, Bret.
Welcome to both of you.
So perhaps just for the record, we need to know your age and your name, your age, and where you were born.
Bret Gibson. I was born in Boulder, Colorado in 1962. Puts me at over 50.
And how and when did you come to live in 4 Mile Canyon?
My folks bought the Boulder Mountain Lodge out of a foreclosure in 1987. I was living in Phoenix at the time. Not really a place I wanted to be, and moved back up here in '88 to give the folks a hand for a couple of months as they put this business back together. And while I was up here, my company I worked for was looted, one of the first Enrons before Enron became famous, and have been here ever since. It's a good transition.
And how long ago did you become involved in as a volunteer fire chief here, as a volunteer fireman?
I joined the 4 Mile Fire Department in 1990. Kind of a way to meet folks and pay back to the community, or so that was the story I gave then. Really, it's to drive big trucks and play with big equipment. Did that in 1990. Became fire chief in 2000. And here we are today.
So what are your responsibilities as fire chief?
Boy, that's a long list. In short, being fire chief is organizing the department, keeping folks motivated and trained, educating your community, making sure that your equipment and personnel are ready, trained, and capable for, in 1990 it would have been just for fires and medical emergencies, and now it's fires and medical emergencies and hazardous materials and structure collapse and all assorted things, including floods.
So who are the folks that you're organizing here, and who are the folks you're training to help in these matters?
They're all local residents. They're my neighbors, my friends, people that live within the district. They're professors at the university, they're book writers, they're bartenders, they're glaciologists. We have a great cross-section of everybody who lives in the canyon, any profession you can think of. We pretty well got covered in our volunteer roster.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about the canyon and the communities here before we actually get to the flood. Let's find out a little bit about who was having to deal with it.
4 Mile is kind of an interesting community in the demographics of Boulder County. We're a long, narrow canyon.
How long is it?
It's 10 miles from the mouth of 4 Mile all the way to the town of Sunset, which is historic town from when the Switzerland Trail used to be a train system.
What is the Switzerland Trail?
Switzerland Trail was a narrow gauge train, ran from Boulder up Water Street, up Boulder Canyon, up 4 Mile Canyon to the end of 4 Mile, which is the town of Sunset, where it would either go up the Switzerland Trail through Sugarloaf to Caribou, or would run up to Sunset, up the Switzerland Trail to the west side of Gold Hill down into Ward, and then I believe, not positive, can then continue to Caribou and come back down.
What was the purpose of it?
It hauled supplies and tourists up, and ore and tourists down out of the mines and mining camps of the time. It got flooded out on 2 major occasions. The last one, I believe, was 1920, when they decided the cost of rebuilding it would be too great, and they tore up the tracks and sold them for scrap. Might have been 1914, but in that era was the last good flood that came down through our canyon.
So the canyon's been flooded before then many times?
Yeah. But back to our district, the population is, most of the homes that are down here are in the $400,000 range, average value. The average home in the Front Range area of Boulder County is in the $800,000 to $1.2 million range. So we're, I don't want to say economically challenged down here, but we're less affluent than a majority of Boulder County. We have, pre-fire, we had 500 residences in our district. We lost roughly 100 of those during the 4 Mile Canyon fire. We've lost another 40 of those to the recent flooding. But our residents were single-family homes. We have a couple of duplex, triplex, which is a fancy word for cabins that have been added onto and now have a separate entrance and a separate bedroom.
What's the population of the canyon in total?
We're down to about 300 homes, and so figure 3 to 4 people per home. We're under 1,000 people live in our district.
So tell me a little bit about the geography of the canyon and what makes it susceptible to flood and where it gets where the water comes from.
Well, like all canyons, you've got ridges on both sides, hills on both sides, and a creek at the bottom. 4 Mile is a little unique in that it's a single drainage. I mean, many of the other, Boulder Creek has South Boulder Creek and North Boulder Creek, and they converge into, but 4 Mile runs from the top all the way to the bottom. It's a very long, very steep, narrow canyon. So there is no place for the water to pool or eddy. So pretty much every drop of rain that comes down pretty much goes to the creek rapidly and then passes right by the Boulder Mountain Lodge at the mouth.
So tell me, it was the week of September 11th, very prescient, when the rain started?
The rain started 5 days earlier. So we had 5+ days of on again, off again rain that saturated the soils. September 11th, in the morning, we knew that we'd reached soil saturation because the scientists told us, but also just good observations outside. When the creek goes from unclear to brown, then you're starting to carry soils into the creek. So your water's running off, it's not soaking in anymore. And we knew that any more rain was going to hit the creek as opposed to being absorbed.
So you were looking at whether you had good weather forecasting, did you? So you knew what to expect or how much rain to expect?
One of the benefits of the 4 Mile Canyon fire, locally known as the Emerson Gulch fire.
When was the fire?
The Emerson Gulch fire, renamed the 4 Mile Canyon fire, was September 6th, 2010. Memorial Day weekend, or Memorial Day Monday. And that fire gave us a very powerful, very organized emergency operations center that's housed in the Office of Emergency Management. Because of that fire, that agency really came into its own. It discovered its value. It discovered how much that kind of organization is needed.
And that's a Boulder-based or a 4 Mile Canyon-based?
No, it's a Boulder City and County-based government. It's under the city of Boulder and Boulder County. And because that organization is there, they have tapped into every weather resource there is, which includes National Institute of Standards and Technology and NOAA. I mean, what better weather people to have than those
and
organizations.
NOAA stands for?
National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration.
And they're a Boulder-based organization?
Well, they're federally based, but they're here in Boulder. And we also have urban drainage, which is a flood control irrigation federal program that's based out of Denver, and the National Weather Service. And they're all tied in. They all communicate with the Office of Emergency Management. And with that communication, that information is then disseminated out to the local fire districts and law enforcement and other rescue groups. So we had a pretty good idea what the weather was going to be September 11th when it got as bad as it did. I don't want to say we had blinders on, but we knew the weather was going to be bad. It just takes a little while for the mind to accept what it knows intellectually to what it really fully grasps as
so what
reality.
did you do as what did the fire department, your volunteer fire department, do when you knew the predictions were not looking good?
When we knew the predictions weren't looking good, we gather up our volunteers and we follow our flood plan, our protocols, which was to dispatch our trucks to predetermined locations, intersections, to be able to close down the roads to keep people from being in harm's way, from driving up from work to go home. But it also allows us to pre-position our equipment and personnel to be able to respond to emergencies that occur without being cut off or in the flood hazard itself. So we, long story short, we go out and stand out in the rain and we're ready to close the roads. And we did that starting about 6 p.m. that evening. And we closed the canyon. We closed all the roads about 11 o'clock that night.
And so how did you notify people that this was happening?
Well, there's a couple of different methods that we use. After the 4 Mile Canyon fire, and we knew that we had a heightened situation for floods, the United Way, Foothills United Way, gave us 100 weather radios, NOAA things, that broadcast those annoying weather alerts. It's going to snow. But they also do it's going to rain. And they'll tell you that you have a flash flood watch, which they did. And then they sent out another alert message that we had a flash flood warning. And then they had a climb to safety message.
Is this based on the, are these warnings based on, the water flow or the?
Well, they're based upon predicted weather, but they're also based on observations that are being made throughout the hills. My firefighters, which are out there standing by the creek, are looking at the creek and seeing how it's rising, and they're relaying that information back to me, and I'm relaying it back to the Emergency Operations Center, and they're relaying it back to NOAA or NIST or all the other weather people out there, and they're able to say, yeah, we predicted 3 inches of rain, and 3 inches of rain should give you this kind of rise in the creek, and that's what we're seeing, or we're seeing more, and so let's adjust our, and so all that information is getting sent out and pumped back in and verified, and it's kind of an organized chaos. And as the situation got worse, and around midnight, and I can't remember, 11:30, 12 o'clock, somewhere in there, we asked Boulder Communications, which is a branch of the Sheriff's Office, to notify everybody in 4 Mile Canyon. We have pre-designated polygons or evacuation zones and they use an Everbridge system, which is a 911 callback. So you get a phone call, recorded voice, with a message. And we have varying degrees of messages, from be aware to danger's on its way to run for your life. And we sent out all three of those messages over about an hour's period of time, starting about 11 o'clock. The first one we sent out, I believe, about 8 p.m. that night. And then the subsequent two, danger's on its way and run for your life, we sent out around midnight. And
did you, as a result of those messages, have people phoning you directly and saying, is this for real? What's going on?
No. No. The fire station we do have a telephone in there, but not too many people have that phone number. Most people, we've done a good job of educating our community. I'm very proud of that. I'm really proud of that our folks took that messaging seriously. So oftentimes as an emergency person, you cut the trees around your house or get a smoke detector, and people don't really seem to take that message to heart, generally speaking. But the flooding, they really took to heart. I think we put out the messaging right after the fire, so people were very open to, you're right, disasters do happen, and they do happen to us. And so folks were prepared. So when we called them and told them to evacuate, they did. And they did their evacuation plan, and they climbed up to their pre-designated high ground spot, or they stayed out of the canyon.
So that was part of the education program, was telling people to find a designated high spot?
Complete with tying a rope from your back door up to, because it could be at night, which it was, so you can find where you're supposed to go in the dark. From having a community gathering spot as opposed to everybody making their own, because we're tribal and we survive better if we're with friends, family, and neighbors. And so folks did that. And
so they were standing out there in the pouring rain, up on some rock faces in the canyon. Is that how it happened?
In some cases, yes. In some cases, folks had pre-designated shelter areas to go to. Not all houses are down in the floodway, so they were going to neighbors who were higher up, or they were going to the second floor of their garage, or they were just areas that they had predetermined were safe places to go. And in most cases, that proved true. Not all safe places turned out to be safe. As we discovered, water not only comes down the creek, but it comes down the hillside. And
so there were some people in danger, were there?
Yeah, absolutely.
What happened to them?
Thursday night, when the second wave of rain came through.
What date was this? September
that was 12th.
12th,
September the 12th. And it was dark, so it must have been around 9 o'clock. The second wave of water came through, and we had folks that were in the town of Salina that the waters came through. They had moved to higher ground, to alternate houses, and the mudslide came down from the hill and came through their homes. In the first case, the couple was buried in debris, mud, rock, tree, gravel, water. The husband was able to dig out the wife. She was she was covered past her chest. It took him a good half hour apparently to dig her out. And they went...
Was there no one there to help them? He was on his own?
He was on his own.